What up, Lucid Crew? Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, I am Lucid Rob, and today we're going to look at videos from all over the internet, looking at things that are weird, things that are creepy, stuff that is confusing, and trying to get down to the bottom of the mysteries across the internet to learn what is real and what is not. Let's get into it.
Antarctica is a mystery. Global warming. It is melting ice that has been there for about 20,000 years. And it began to expose these complex structures. These are massive complex structures with room after room after room after room. Google Earth pixelated all of that out. They don't want us seeing. There was a film crew from Los Angeles that went down to document what was happening, and they have not been heard from since. They've disappeared. If they were successful finding the bases, they probably would not have been allowed to leave. Mainstream doesn't want to talk about it. They've been told not to talk about that.
That is so interesting to me. So if all the ice is melting and all these old structures are popping up and they're not allowing us to know about them, why do you think they chose these things to not let us know about? I mean, I guess it'd be kind of hard to hide the pyramids of Giza, and that's why they're trying so hard to keep the truth behind them covered up. Why do you think they're so selective about the things that they share with us and things they don't? If we have ancient structures that we know about and that are here, like the pyramids of Giza and the Sphinx and all this other shit that's in mainstream archaeology, do you think that those were just exposed before they decided not to share things with us from our past? So they're just like, you know, giving them different stories? Or do you think that they just don't hold as much history inside of them as the things that they're keeping from us, like in Antarctica and everywhere else in the world? Just super interesting to me, the fact that they're just covering up some stuff and just not all of it.
Bruh, what on earth is this thing? Apparently it's called the opium or the erosion bird, and looking at it makes me feel weird. And don't worry, they're definitely AI generated, but many are beginning to claim that creatures like this are actually real, and we've already encountered them in our past before. Depictions of bird-like creatures have been found all over the ancient world, in Mesopotamia and Egypt, and even all the way across the ocean in the Mayans and Aztecs. Why did cultures all around the world just all independently come up with the same allegedly fictitious anthropomorphic bird? The ruins left behind by one of these ancient civilizations are rumored to have been discovered and then covered up in Antarctica as well. A lot of controversy behind these. I actually made another video about it, so check it out if you want to know more. They were allegedly uncovered during an expedition led by Captain Robert Falcon Scott in 1912. Fast forward a couple years to 1946 for yet another Antarctic expedition, this time led by Admiral Richard Byrd. Robert Falcon Scott? Admiral Richard Byrd? Okay, these are definitely coincidences. Anyway, we were fresh out of World War II, and Admiral Byrd was tasked with mapping out sites for potential future military sites in the South Pole. While scouting, him and his crew stumbled on something that no one in the world would have ever expected, and he documented it all in his personal diary, which didn't make the final cut of his official publication and was discovered by his son years after his death. In here, he recounts a mind-boggling story. As he flies over Antarctica, he passes over some mountains and discovers an enormous opening in the icy surface. Him and his squadron fly into it, and all of a sudden, they're surrounded by a luscious green landscape of grass and forests. He continues on, seeing giant creatures roaming around him, and he's brought to a shimmering rainbow city made of crystal. He's surrounded by these flying disc-shaped objects that lead him to the ground, and he's brought to a tall being called the Master. Highly advanced beings living in a futuristic city inside the Earth? Yup, it's the infamous Hollow Earth theory. And yeah, all of this is in his diary. And to be clear, Admiral Byrd was one of the most decorated and highly celebrated officers in the American military. He wrote this diary during his prime years, not when he became old, so dismissing it all as a senile crackpot's journal doesn't make any sense. In the diary, he talks about meeting this tall being who tells them they're disappointed in humanity and are afraid that we might nuke ourselves into extinction. And this is around the time we started doing nuclear testing. Maybe this was our first glimpse of the real erosion bird? Bird-like gods, entrances to underground worlds in Antarctica with tall beings. Kinda checks out. And maybe these beings and all the flying discs mentioned are also related to all the UFO sightings we've been seeing in the past couple years. Apparently, Admiral Byrd really wanted to share these findings, but was ordered by the military to stay silent about it. Along with bird-like beings, records of inner Earth civilizations have been reported by many, if not almost every ancient society of our past. Buddhists have the subterranean kingdom of Agartha. Ancient Indians have Patala. The Mayans got Xibalba, an underworld civilization, which is called Chico Mostok for the Aztecs. Ancient African and other native cultures talk about subterranean cavern spirits. The Sumerians knew it as Kur, Babylonians Urkala. Ancient Chinese Diyu, Japanese Yomi. Ancient Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and even Celtics all had myths of an underground world inhabited by superior beings, some of whom were cast out of this utopia onto the surface of Earth and started humanity as we currently know it. Could this even be the original Garden of Eden? And just like the flood myth that appears in every single ancient civilization, when stories are repeated this often, we have to ask ourselves, what if they actually happened? These giant holes have been reported to be seen at the poles on numerous occasions. In 1829, a fisherman named Olaf Janssen claims to have sailed through a polar opening and into the planet's interior, where he met a race of tall beings, giants. In 1985, a naval engineer team at Myrtles Station in the South Pole reports seeing circular aircraft flying above an area called the Beardmore Glacier. They couldn't investigate it because the area was a no-fly zone, obviously. But at one point, they get an emergency call from an injured crew member that needs immediate evacuation. In order to get to him on time, they needed to fly through the Beardmore Glacier. And when they did, they reported seeing almost exactly what Admiral Byrd documented. A giant football field-sized opening, some sort of entrance in the ice leading deep beneath the surface. And when they get back to the station, a man in a black suit arrives, telling them that they did not see what they just saw. Are these the entrances to the hidden underground lands of our past, like Agartha, and the true home of the Erosion Bird?
I absolutely love the Hollow Earth theory. I'm kind of on board with it just because I like it so much. I don't know if I've seen enough evidence to really 100% believe it's true. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff out there leaning toward, it being a possibility. But I think with all this stuff, I think all of us are a little bit biased in the sense to where the stuff that we like, we lean a little more toward just like hoping it's true. I mean, maybe not everyone. Some of us could be maybe 100% rational and logical, like I try to be. But like I said, hoping something is true isn't the same as believing it's true. And a lot of these things, I hope they're true. I hope there are more, land masses outside an ice wall. I hope that there isn't a species living within inner Earth. I hope that, everything we hear about outer space and aliens on other planets is true. I love the possibility of all that stuff. Not saying I believe it all. I'm saying I like it. So there's definitely things that I hope are more true than other things. And this is one of those things. But let me know what you think about the Hollow Earth theory. Do you think it's true? Do you think that they are coming out to warn us with the flying saucers? Every time it seems like there's a war that is being started, we're seeing more UFOs. Do you think that they're trying to tell us this could be the last one if you guys, get trigger happy, fucking chill out?
There's some pyramid-like structures or hills in China as well, right?
There's thousands of pyramids in China. Xi'an, the province of Xi'an, is just the moment you land there from your aircraft, you're seeing pyramids everywhere. I've been there. There are certainly hundreds and hundreds of them, distributed across fields, vanishing off into the distance in all directions. They've been terraced and used as agriculture. The local farmers grow crops on them. I went there with Chinese archaeologists. They haven't excavated a single one. Not one.
Why not?
They said, we don't have, this was nearly 10 years ago I was there. They said they probably got the money now, but they said then they didn't have the money. They said, we're an old country. We don't mind if we wait 200 years to get to grips with this.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And the famous tomb of the first emperor is part of this pattern. It is also a pyramid. It has also not been excavated. The terracotta army around it has been found.
The terracotta army is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It was on display somewhere, wasn't it? Where you can go and see it live?
Yeah, they did some kind of travel.
I'd want to see that thing. I'd want to look at those things. What a bizarre concept. Now, these pyramids, so this one that this emperor was buried in that had the terracotta army, was that a pyramid as well?
It is a pyramid.
It is.
Absolutely. It's a man-made pyramid. The terracotta army was buried around its edges, not in the pyramid itself.
So the army was there to protect him?
Yeah, to protect his soul into the afterlife seems to have been the idea. And then there's a mythology that's come down that within the pyramid is a lake of mercury, that there are mechanical devices in there which will fire arrows at you if you go in. That there's a whole story about how intensely protected it is, and up to this day it's not been excavated.
That's so crazy. How could someone leave that alone?
And even major archaeological sites like Tiwanaku in Bolivia, for example, you'll find that only about 2% of the site has been excavated. I don't know how we can draw inferences about the whole site from a tiny little fraction like that, and that's the problem, I think, with archaeology, and it's why we have to consider another way.
We're looking at an image of the terracotta army now in front of this pyramid, and it is spectacular. Now that I think about it, I don't think that was on display anywhere. I think maybe they had a couple of them.
They brought some of them. They came to the British Museum. There were a number of museums.
But it's so much bigger than I thought it was.
Yeah.
I mean, how many? There's thousands.
Yeah.
There's thousands of these terracotta figures.
Absolutely.
And this pyramid was made out of what? Was it stones?
Ramped earth, mainly.
Okay. So they just sort of shaped the ground. They just dug around it.
Yeah, they brought in earth and turned it into a pyramidal mound. Over the
But
top.
it wasn't.
It's
so
not,
it's just.
It's not
stacked
massive
on
stone
top.
blocks. It's not massive stone. That's why they can grow crops on the sides of some of these pyramids.
Wow, how weird.
Yeah.
So they would build these giant mounds of dirt and then dig holes in them and support them. And like,
Well,
what
they
would
probably
do on the inside
they
of
probably
it?
created the interior, subterranean as they were building the whole thing over it. Yeah.
And they just stacked dirt on top of it.
Yeah.
Wow, what a weird way to make a house.
Yeah, and then we have to consider this with archaeological sites all around the world, is that any site may actually not be the product of just one culture, but may have been reworked and worked over and used by many different cultures over
This
many
is
different periods.
stunning to me. I found out about this because of a friend of John Anthony West who was here with him. He showed me, he lives in China, and he was showing me some video of it. And I was like, how do I not know about this? I had no idea there was this many of them. Oh, so here's one that's exposed?
Controversial ancient pyramids of China.
That one
Yeah.
looks exposed.
Yeah.
It's
And that
made of
one looks
stone.
blocky. Yeah, yeah.
Well, that is another thing about China that we just don't have a clue. When we think about the age and scale of things, we're so silly. We've only been around since 1776 is when the country was established. It's not really that long ago. You're dealing with China. You're dealing with literally thousands of years of civilization, all rising and falling and taking place and adapting and growing, all in this one area. That's still, in our eyes, in a lot of ways, it's kind of behind, right? I mean, they're behind environmentally. They're behind when it comes to human rights.
Consider this. The Portuguese, in the late 1400s, have rounded the Cape of Good Hope, and they've entered the Indian Ocean in their little ships. They've entered the Indian Ocean, and they actually establish a huge empire. They go to Malacca. They go all over the place, okay? The seas are open to them. If they had come 40 years earlier, they would have encountered the Chinese treasure ships. Ships that were 50 times larger than the little caravels that the Portuguese were sailing in. But you know what the Chinese did at that time? They went through a period where they felt they just wanted to give gifts to people. And they put together these huge fleets carrying incredibly precious gifts, silks and ceramics, and they took them all around the Indian Ocean and they just gave them to people. So off the coast of East Africa and in East Africa you can find remains of this pottery from this episode. And then a Chinese emperor came along and he closed the doors, burned all the boats, shut everything down, and didn't let anybody speak to China for 200 years.
Whoa, what a dick.
Well, he felt that it was time for the Chinese culture to turn inward.
Yeah.
And they were afraid that their ancient culture, on one hand, there might have been maybe a laudable motive in that they were concerned that the ancient culture was going to get contaminated by too much contact with
Isn't that-
degenerate cultures from other places, and that was a factor in it.
That constant desire to maintain the current situation.
It's human. We have to say it's some kind of human nature.
Yeah.
The Terracotta Army is incredible. I saw it at the Field Museum in Chicago when I was living there. It was awesome. They had 3, I think, of the actual Terracotta Army statues, like encased, like protected, obviously, because they're very old and fragile. And they had like a miniature, exact replica of the entire layout of where they're digging them up. And I guess every one of those soldiers, those statues, is different. Like there's not one that's identical because they're based off of the actual soldiers that were part of that Terracotta Army to protect that dude. So it's super fucking interesting, super awesome display. Obviously it was at the museum, so it didn't talk about any of the conspiracies or any of the pyramids and stuff like that, but just learning a little bit and actually seeing the statues like up close was really fucking cool. And there are conspiracies around this, so let me know if you're interested in hearing about some of those.
Cardi B is clearly being controlled.
Nobody asked me about
You've probably
no
seen this
damn
video.
kid. What's good?
She freezes.
So is there going to be a public registry? Because I'm going to be honest with
He
you.
notices.
Take the gift cards. Fuck everybody's present.
And then to bring
Take
her
the
back,
gift
he
cards,
claps 1,
Take the gift
2,
cards. Take the
3.
gift cards.
Repeats
Yeah, because
herself.
they might put, what's
She's
that
back.
thing that was going on?
Now watch this video.
I'm feeling weird, so nervous, a little bit overwhelmed.
Watch when she freezes. Now notice how the people in the background noticed what was happening, and then the interviewer said, it's good, it's good, it's good, and then Cardi came right back too. Notice the people in the background notice, and then she says it's good 3 times. And that's when Cardi B comes back. My wife actually pointed out the correlation of the repeating themselves 3 times before she came back too. Nevertheless, you have to admit that is weird. Evidence of MK Ultra?
I'll be the first to admit that there's some weird shit that celebrities do and how they act and shit like that, but I think Cardi B, that's just like her whole demeanor. It's just kind of weird. Like, she's very animated from what I've seen. I don't listen to her music. It's not my thing. Not my vibe. I don't really pay attention to anything that she does in her personal life. But from things that I've seen like this, like, she is very animated and she does, you know, kind of do things to like provoke a reaction out of people. Who knows? When it comes to these celebrities, I don't know, man. The ones that are like really in spotlight, maybe they are, you know, being controlled. I know that some of them have handlers. I don't know if that's just a PR department or what, and they just call them handlers to like keep them out of trouble and shit. But who knows, man? Who knows? I don't want to find out.
And guys, we're down here taking breaks. We're downtown Flint. Downtown. So check this out. That tree is clearly 300 years old. Probably 200. But look at what we found inside. What is this? I got some markings on it, but I don't know. That ain't natural. Anybody got any thoughts?
I'm thinking maybe like an old grave. Maybe somebody like planted a tree on top of a grave next to a gravestone hundreds of years ago, and it just grew around it like that. Who knows though? Like, just because America's a new country doesn't mean the continent is new. You know, this continent's been around just as long as any other continent, and there have been civilizations that have lived here long before us Americans came here and started doing our thing. So at the end of the day, I guess you don't really know until it gets looked at and it gets tested and carbon dated and all that fucking shit. But in this case, I think it was probably, like I said, just a grave potentially that someone planted the tree on.
This photo was taken at a boxing event a couple of years ago by the mother of my friend who's fighting, and she posted a couple of pictures of the night on Facebook, to which everyone kept asking who the girl is in the ring. I was at the event and never recall seeing her, and neither could anyone else. So we looked into this a bit more, and we found out that years before the venue used to be a children's home and got burnt down. And my mate seems to think that they look like burn marks on her arm. What do y'all think? Everyone thought yes.
Oh no, that's not right.
That's not right.
Oh.
That's not right. For all the people that are like, that's just a girl in the ring, no one can remember seeing her.
And that is a person that you would remember.
You would remember seeing a skulking, creepy girl walking around the ring.
But picture it like a gas tank meter. When you are a fresh entity, you're on full. And when you start to do things, like you become full-bodied apparitions, you interact, you move things, whatever, what have you, and they're expending energy, that gas tank ticks down. But a lot of times, the freshest entities are the most solid in that way. So this, at least for me, this feels like an entity that died very recently.
I'm beginning to think it's not human.
Really?
And I think it is imitating someone who died from fire. And again, wild conjecture. There's no sensationalization there.
Exactly.
The face, the eyes look a little too large and dark.
And the mouth is like non-existent.
Is hardly existent. And we talk about this a lot when entities parade as humans, they don't always get it right. There's certain aspects of it that just aren't completely right. Like the hair is not quite right.
Nope. First things first. That's a nope. I have a lot of friends that fight. I got a few buddies that are pro boxers, a few that are amateur and pro, MMA fighters, UFC fighters and shit. And if I was ever at one of those fights and I saw that shit, that would freak me the fuck out for sure. Especially if I saw it after the fact in a photograph, and being there and not seeing it. Fuck, man. I don't know if I can ever go to a fight again. That's fucking wild. That's interesting what they said, though, about, non-human entities not always getting it right. Being that the eyes may be a bit of a different. The hair might be a bit different. The mouth non-existent. But if it was a burn victim, I could see the hair being like matted and like that, and you know, the eyes blackened out, maybe like charred, burnt or something, and maybe the fucking lips just being burnt off. I don't know. That is terrifying. Keep my composure as much as possible, but that's a big fucking nope. That's a nope more than anything. I need a nope bell or like a fucking horn or something to hit when there's something like this that just fucking trips me out. Fuck that.
I don't know if you saw this story, Jeremy, but basically Ron DeSantis tried to take away Disney World's rights of self-governance since they're pushing all the child grooming stuff lately. And Disney World came back and was like, not so fast. We only answer to the crown. And this is just almost hilarious if you know what's going on, because they would never ever admit this unless they were forced to in a situation like this. But they basically admitted, like, you don't have jurisdiction over us because we're owned by Britain. So for those of you who are like confused by this, apparently the land that Disney World is on is owned by the crown. And so since like 1960, Disney World has basically been a tax-free sovereign district, you know, exempt from taxes and anything to do with federal statutes. And they basically claim to just be like an apolitical charity. You know, Disney does a lot of charity work so that they can be tax exempt. Then they started pushing all this woke stuff, and so Ron DeSantis was like, all right guys, you want to get involved in politics? Then let's do politics. We're going to take away your tax exempt status in Florida. But then Disney World came back and pulled out this clause from the British Bill of Rights, which is a royal clause that dates back to like 1692. And it says that essentially Britain has sovereignty over any territory of the crown until the last descendant of King Charles III has passed. And
that's wild. I didn't know that was a thing. I know that like we can sell pieces of our land here to other countries. I don't know if we're allowed to, but I know that it's happened. But I'm not really sure like how that stops. I don't know the laws and the rules around that. I don't know if like overall the US still has, you know, controlling power over that land because it's on US soil. I don't know. This whole thing with Disney World and DeSantis has been pretty crazy back and forth. I live down here in Florida, but I don't know a ton about all of this stuff. Maybe I should learn more about this stuff living down here. But then again, I still haven't even learned how to swim, and I've been living down here in Florida for 3 years, so we'll see.
Deep in the heart of the Louisiana Bayou, a tale unfolds at the Myrtles Plantation, an estate with a sinister past. It's said to be one of the most haunted places in the South. The story begins in the 19th century when the plantation was a thriving cotton farm. One chilling tale tells of Chloe, a slave who had her ear amputated as punishment. She was caught listening to private discussions and was subsequently subjected to a brutal punishment. Seeking revenge, she poisoned her owner's family with a cake. They died in agony, and her vengeful spirit still roams the property. Visitors have heard her cries and seen her ghostly figure lurking near the grand mirror. The Myrtles Plantation boasts at least a dozen restless spirits, from ghostly children who mysteriously play in the hallways, to a Confederate soldier who wanders the grounds. These tormented souls make the Myrtles a place where the living dare not tread after dark, leaving visitors to wonder if they'll make it through the night.
That's creepy. Tormented spirits, man. That's something I don't often voluntarily dip my fingers in. I don't want any pissed off spirits.
Did you know that there were World's Fair exposition events held in Brazil during the 1800s and early 1900s? As the story goes, in the city of Rio de Janeiro in 1908, the Brazilian National Exposition was held near the Babylon Hill area. Just like all the other similar events from around the world, a small city of incredibly ornate and diverse architectural wonders were constructed in an impressively short amount of time. They say that almost everything was built using wood, plaster, and other temporary materials, but it was done on a gigantic scale, with one structure exceeding 50,000 square feet. And then, after all that time, effort, and planning, not to mention money, the event opened a month late and only lasted for 3 months. As per usual with these events, it was a financial failure for the organizers and investors. And then, according to plan, of course, they tore everything down as soon as the event was over. Isn't it interesting, though, that we often find in these areas certain isolated structures that have survived to the present day? One such example is the State's Pavilion building, which is now the Earth Sciences Museum. There's no indication that this structure was any different from all the others at the expo, And yet, for some apparently arbitrary reason, they decided to make it using permanent materials. Today it houses one of Brazil's most important collections of historical artifacts, but it is the building itself that is arguably the most fascinating and important historical treasure in the collection. The massive 65,000 square foot building is constructed with carved ashlar stone and local gneiss. Its interior is filled with rich architectural details, cast iron and brass elements, tile and marble floors, as well as all the finest furnishings, statues, and original art by famous painters. And just like every other part of the expo, there were tens of thousands of electric lights, both inside and outside, that would illuminate the grounds at night. It looks like it belongs somewhere in old world Europe. Many of these buildings appear to have been constructed with the same level of craftsmanship. Why do we find this recurring architectural motif in so many major cities across the world? Were these structures truly just temporary, or might they hide important truths about our world history, kept secret from the public eye? Could there have existed a unified global system prior to World War I? Its true timeline obscured by time and the fog of multiple wars? What were they trying to hide?
All right, so here's the thought that I just had. So I am all for this. Like, I love the mud flood conspiracy. I love thinking that, you know, all these buildings have like been around, like old world buildings that were real and, you know, built with, you know, either Freemasons that came from Europe, and that's why the architecture was similar to, you know, European buildings, or forgotten, lost, or hidden technology that helped build all this stuff in such a short time. I love all that shit. But now I'm thinking about it, and I don't know if this is quite what I believe yet. It's just a thought I had right now when I was making this comparison about this building sticking around and being similar to the other ones that they tore down. It's a World's Fair, right? So it's basically like a science fair or some place where people come to kind of see what's possible, kind of come see what people's different abilities are, kind of like concept cars, right? It's not like a mass production car, but they'll make something that looks really fucking cool to show you what they're capable of. It's like a runway show as well. Like all the crazy shit that like these avant-garde fashion designers make, like that's not actually in their fashion line. That's just basically to like stretch to the extent, like the very furthest abilities of that designer or that artist, you know, capabilities. And that's why it looks so fucking weird. It's not things people would actually wear. It's just to show you like the mind behind the fashion designer. So I'm thinking if these buildings were actually like paper mache or like a Hollywood movie set, you know, just kind of like empty shells, like what they're saying, if they built those around the actual like well-made buildings, if they were to build these like paper mache buildings around that, I could see the reasoning be just to kind of show, you know, what is capable, what the capabilities are of like the humans doing this stuff. So I could see the rationale behind believing that these buildings were, you know, just put up in a very short time using, you know, temporary materials and really not having any interior to them, just kind of being like a Hollywood movie set. I could see that. I could see the rationality behind believing that. I prefer to think that they were actually built. They were actual like real buildings and stuff, though. Even if that doesn't make as much sense for me to believe, even if, you know, it's a little more out there, a little further out there, I'm still on the side of believing that, you know, these structures, these buildings were actually created and torn down for whatever reason. And only because, well, I guess not only because I like the idea of, you know, us having the ability to do that at some point in history, but also just because like all the other shit that they're hiding from us, you know, the terracotta army, the pyramids around there, like we saw in this video, all these other structures in Antarctica and on the moon and wherever else these structures are, like all the shit like they're keeping from us, like, yeah, why wouldn't they? You know, why wouldn't they keep this from us? Why wouldn't they keep whatever processes we made to build these buildings from us in order to, you know, push toward using, you know, disposable, cheap materials to keep, you know, companies in business and their profits up? And I mean, it's kind of like using fossil fuel. Like, there's no reason to use that shit anymore if we really don't want to. I'm sure we could probably run fucking cars and planes on water right now if we wanted to, but we're not, because it's not profitable, you know? So yeah, so that's where I'm going to go with this. I think I like the idea of these being very real things. And dude, the World's Fair Chicago looked so fucking awesome from the photos I saw. I would love to have seen all that while living in Chicago. It's really depressing. Actually, when it comes down to it, it's really depressing that we're not able to really know what's going on, not really see everything that we're capable of, and see everything that we've done so far. Like, there's so much beautiful, like, architecture and art that we're allowed to see. Like, I can only imagine the kind of stuff that we're not allowed to see or not allowed to know about. It's really depressing. But that's it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for sending these videos, man. These were really cool. There's a lot of variety here, a lot of things that I didn't really know that much about. Some things I knew about, some things I knew a little bit about, but not as much as these videos went into. And some of these things that I've just not heard about before. Oh, man, but that fucking the demon in the boxing ring. Sheesh. No fucking thank you. If this is your first time watching and you like what you saw, please consider liking, subscribing, joining the Discord, send me videos you want me to see. You can check out the link in the description, join the Discord. There's a link in the description, check out my SoundCloud, in which this song that's playing right now, as well as other songs that I have written and recorded and produced and mixed and mastered, did it all myself, just like I do these YouTube videos. So some support over there would be awesome too. There's also a link to my merchandise. New merch store will be done soon, but right now the merch is available on a third-party website that has really good quality stuff if you want to check it out. It's all around the stuff we talk about on this channel and the things we go into and the whole Lucid crew that we have going on here. So thanks so much. Hope you had an awesome time hanging out with me today. And until next time, peace.